Welcome back to the Michael Cohen Show on our continued journey to 250,000 subscribers. So do me a favor, hit subscribe, watch, and share with your friends because there's a lot that's going on. Now, the other day on Political Beatdown, my co-host Ben Meiselas and I, we had one of our respectful debates, something that you don't really see too often, at least in the members of Congress and between Republicans and Democrats. But this time, it was about Trump and his latest string of defamation lawsuits against the mainstream media. Now, ultimately, both Ben and I, you see, before I get into that, something that you've heard me say 100 times, you may remember the Ed Koch saying, if you agree with me 6 out of 12 times, you should vote for me. If you agree with me 12 out of 12 times, you should see a psychiatrist. Ben and I see things a little bit different, but at the end of the day, we both agree that the First Amendment rights are important and that they have to be paramount. Except I take the stance that these lawsuits that Trump is bringing, the one against the Des Moines Register, against Ann Salzer, as well as the one he just settled with ABC Disney, they may possibly positively change how defamation lawsuits are handled here in the United States. It's an incredible conversation, and it's thought-provoking, which is what Political Beatdown is all about. Play the clip. Now, I wanted to say, I was on CNN the other night with Abby Phillip, and some people, they got angry at me because I turned around and I said, I like, in some respect, what Trump is doing in terms of suing the Des Moines Register and Ann Salzer. Now, I don't like the fact he's suing Ann Salzer, but I like the fact he's suing the Des Moines Register to change the way that defamation laws in this country are actually handled. Someone, and I want you just to hear my point onto it, as someone—
We're definitely going to be debating this one.
As someone who has had more than 100 different lies told about him, where the journalists don't give a shit, they just go ahead, they write what they want. They don't even give you an opportunity to respond. When they send you, hey, we're going to print blah, blah, blah on a topic of your being in Prague. By the time you get that question from the journalist, they've already published the story that they want. So when you give it to them, they update it several hours later. The damage that they can cause, the damage that they do cause, is beyond what anybody could understand unless you've experienced it. And I've experienced it over 100 different times with different topics. And the only reason that they do this, by the way, is so that they could be first to the table, that they can get as much credit for the topic as they want. And they don't do a scintilla, not a scintilla of background fact checking or anything. They just go straight to print because they're in competition with, the non-traditional news sources like bloggers and so on. Here, it's going to force them to own their mistakes and do something about it.
Where I disagree with you is not on the latter point that you say, but to me, I'm confused about your point about suing Ann Salzer, who did a poll in Iowa.
I took back Ann Salzer. I mean, unless she knew that the poll was illegitimate, unless she knew that. Now, let me just say this. You may remember that very famous meme of me saying, says who, going back in 2016. I knew that the poll that Brianna Keeler was talking about was bullshit. I knew it was. I knew the poll she was referring to. And so
just assume, and look, go with Ann Salzer. Just assume in the wildest example, she knew the poll was BS, despite the fact that she has her own methodology that's been accurate, that she applied here over and over again. And let's say that she ran it through her rigged algorithm and came up with an outcome that was incorrect and wrong. But Donald Trump ended up winning that state and winning the election. So, and he's now the president-elect, unfortunately. So the part that even if I concede those points, which I don't think is what happened, what would be the damages where you won the election and someone just proved to be wrong,
Totally
lost
agree.
her credibility, I
Totally
think,
agree.
on being a pollster and is
But
not in the
totally
polling
agree.
industry? What are your damages to make a
Totally
lawsuit?
agree. But that wasn't my point. Wasn't
Oh,
about
we started off. I like the way he sued Ann Selzer.
Well, I do, because it will change, as I said, the way that the United States handles defamation, almost to the same way, and bring it to the way, for example, that the UK handles defamation. Do you remember? Here's another lie that they told about me. It made the news 24/7 for like a week, that I received $400,000 from former Ukrainian President Poroshenko for setting up a meeting between Poroshenko and Trump. Not true. Never met Poroshenko, never spoke to Poroshenko, never spoke to anybody on behalf of Poroshenko, never received a penny, let alone
Did you file a
$400,000.
lawsuit though against the people who? Did you file a lawsuit against the people who did it?
So initially I did, but then I ended up having to self-surrender to Otisville. So that kind of disappeared, not to mention what all the lawyers said is we can do it. But the way that the defamation laws here, as a public figure, you're not going to be able to get compensated anyway. So you know what Poroshenko did? He filed the lawsuit in the UK, and he won, and they had to retract the story, and they paid him damages, both legal as well as personal. Very different than what you would have gotten here in the States.
Well, I'll say this. The law of defamation in the United States, and you and I didn't discuss that we were going to.
Can I just say one last thing? Because somebody like Chris says it's not everything's about you, Michael. It's not applicable. Chris, let me tell you why you're wrong about that. I'm using myself as the example so that what was done to me should never be done to you. I'm not talking about me, Michael Cohen. I'm using myself as the example, the same way that I went and I took it all the way to the Supreme Court on a writ of certiorari to ensure that no American citizen is ever imprisoned because they refuse to waive their First Amendment constitutional right. What they did to me, they will do to others. And I don't want it to happen to you or anybody.
But Cohen, where I disagree with you there, respectfully, as we do respectful debates here, is you mentioned Chris. Chris is someone on the chat, right? Is that who Chris is?
Yeah.
Okay. So Chris is not a public figure. Chris is not a limited public figure. So Chris would actually have an easier time suing somebody than you, Michael Cohen, who is a public figure, has. The standard for you under New York Times v. Sullivan, which I think is a 1972 Supreme Court case, is that Michael Cohen has to show that somebody who defamed him acted with actual malice, either intentionally and or with a reckless disregard for the truth. Now, Chris, who's on our chat, if someone were to make up a lie about a private person like Chris and said, Chris does X, Y, and Z, and it put him in criminal contempt or disrepute or said anything, all he would have to show, Chris, is negligence, which is a similar system to what exists in the United Kingdom. So look, I'm not ganging up with Chris.
And you're a public person.
But you're in a unique position as a public figure. I'm a public figure. Chris isn't.
You are a public figure.
So
by the way, they can easily argue that if Chris hypothetically has an Instagram account, a TikTok account, a YouTube channel, that he put himself out there. So everybody who has a TikTok account that talks politics, all these people that go on and with YouTube or TikTok or anybody, any one of these podcasters that are on the Midas Touch Network, they've now pushed themselves to become public figures. Therefore, they should end up going through what I did, that the lies that destroy you, that damage your family's happiness, and so on. And there's no way to ever, who was it, McCarthy, during the McCarthy hearings, where what's his name said, what does a person have to do to get their reputation back? The lie is all people remember. The truth, ignored.
If you want to know, I disagree with the part. I think that our defamation laws here strike the right balance regarding public figures versus non-public figures, and trying not to chill the speech of journalists to report on difficult or controversial topics. Now, you and I can have a broader conversation about the state of sensational journalists who use that as a pretext to write bad articles that toe the line of defamation but don't cross it. But, ultimately, the part about our law, if we're having a philosophical legal discussion, that I think is needed in our kind of reform is that anybody can basically file a lawsuit against anybody. And if you lose the lawsuit, you're not responsible for any attorney's fees at all. If you are, depending on the statute, you're really not responsible for the fees, with it. And so the question is, does that allow, in my view, people like Trump, where if he loses a case, and a lot of these cases, there's no consequence for him, to take the lawsuit he filed against you, Cohen. Let's actually make
another example.
Make it personal against
Chris.
Make it. Let's you make it personal. Let's make it personal against you. Last year, in the past 9 months, Trump sued you for $500 million, like $500 million. That puts you in a very difficult situation. You had to fight it. You believe the allegations against you were frivolous by him. So you said, Donald Trump, you need to sit for a deposition. Donald Trump said, I'm not sitting for a deposition. You said, okay, I'm going to the federal judge and I'm asking the federal judge. Trump in that case was represented by the same exact lawyer who represented him in his defamation case against ABC. They were very kind of similar things. He sued them for like $1 billion. He sued you for $500 million. Ultimately, you didn't settle. You knew Trump's tactics. You knew how he thinks. So you said, look, you're suing me and you're making your lawsuit's basically a PR stunt. Okay, bet. I'm going to bring you into a conference room and put you under oath for 9 hours or 7 hours. I'm going to take your deposition with the top lawyers in the country. You're going to answer those questions to the camera, and we're going to go one by one by one. Trump tried to resist. He was eventually ordered to do it. He tried to delay. You were persistent. You told the judge, I'm not giving up. Then Trump dismissed the lawsuit. You didn't get paid back from him. You incurred all of those attorney's fees.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Thanks to my public profile, to our political beatdown brigaders, who some have, chipped in as well to the legal fund and my own, that tactic cost me over $300,000. I want you to soak that crap in for a quick second. Chris, listen to me when I'm saying this. $300,000 it cost, and we didn't even get to depositions. So just imagine the damage that these mega billionaires can do, because Trump doesn't just have his money, the billions. He's got the RNC money, big money. He's got super PAC money, really big money. And his money's got money with the mega billionaires that are behind him, like an Elon Musk, who could take 1 week's worth of interest and basically bury anyone, which is why ABC ended up capitulating to a $16 million settlement. And I suspect the Des Moines Register and Gannett do the same exact thing. It's not right. And the point of the matter is, what this defamation scenario is, it's only supposed to force, my position, it forces journalists to do what Ben and I do here every single week, twice a week, with each and every one of you. What I do on my Mea Culpa podcast, what he does on the Meiselas brothers and Legal AF and everything else. You get facts. So you can't just spew off horse shit. You actually have to do your homework. Most journalists don't do that. And as a result, my opinion, it's just my opinion, you can differ, and I respect that. My opinion, it's going to force journalists to be better and not try to rush out an article in an hour without doing any fact checking, without having acknowledged that the sources that they may be using are full of shit.
Can't you say, though, in the alternative, what it does is it's chilling the First Amendment rights of journalists who are afraid,
by forcing them to be accurate?
No, that they're afraid that if they believe they're citing to a judicial opinion whereby a federal judge said that the distinction between a rape and a sexual assault involves a technicality under New York law, and you're on
George
a TV show in a public way, and you're out there saying something that at least looked not too different from what the New York judge was saying about the New York law on these issues, then all of a sudden, boom, you're going to get hit with a defamation suit by describing.
It's wrong. It's wrong. And by the way, George is a veteran. George is wickedly bright. I know George almost 30 years. He's super smart. He was wrong. And you know what? The people that were scripting out the show, they were wrong. Did they do it maybe for sensationalistic purpose? You never know. I'm not saying he did. I'm not saying that they didn't. That's a settled case. My only point is that now journalists are going to have to do their homework. They cannot just do a scintilla of fact-checking information. If they do even that, you're right. Because Miss T Vibes, you're right. Facts matter.
Well,
and that's
facts matter, but let me read
every single day. Hey, everyone. First of all, thanks for watching. I mean, we're going to be posting daily episodes with reactions and talking about politics. We'll be talking about everything, in fact. So please like and subscribe. Join us on this journey.